You've probably walked into a gun shop, asked for a rifle they carry, and gotten the old, sorry, all-out routine. Then, a week later, you see the same gun in a Facebook group posted by a guy who just walked in and bought it. What gives? Could your local dealer be secretly hiding the good stuff? In this video, we'll talk about why some of the best-selling rifles are mysteriously unavailable, even though they're sitting in stock rooms across the country. We're covering everything from Springfield SAINT Victors that never leave the back shelf to Anderson AM-15s that magically disappear during election years. Along the way, we'll name the other rifles, the prices, and the shop floor games you'll want to watch for. If you're a first-time buyer or a seasoned regular, this is the kind of behind-the-counter reality check nobody else is telling you about. I walk into my local shop every couple weeks just to see what's new, and there's always one rack behind the counter with the real goodies. Ask to see the Springfield SAINT Victor 5.56, and sometimes the clerk shrugs. Must have sold the last one this morning. Funny thing, I'll come back a day later and the same rifle is resting in its usual slot with a discreet tag that simply reads hold. The SAINT Victor 1150 MSRP for the Black B5 stock version is popular because it ships with a nickel-boron trigger-pinned gas block and those excellent spring-loaded sights. When supply is tight, the guys who already bought optics, mags, and ammo from that store get first dibs while newcomers are politely told nothing's in stock. It isn't malicious, it's basic relationship management. A shop keeps its reliable spenders happy, so they return for gunsmith work and accessories, and those customers in turn don't grind the staff down on price. The rifle isn't truly hidden, but it's parked off the sales floor, usually in a backroom cradle, and only materializes when a name the employees recognize walks in. If you've ever wondered why a place will list a SAINT Victor on the website, yet never have one in the display case, that's the reason. It's not personal, you just haven't joined the club yet. The Smith & Wesson M&P 15 Sport II sits at $799 MSRP, yet you'll routinely see it advertised for $649 during rebate season. That thin margin leaves the shop earning lunch money once you subtract freight and credit card fees. Meanwhile, a boutique billet receiver AR with an $1,800 price tag might yield $350 profit. Guess which one the sales crew is going to champion? They'll happily pull Sport IIs off the shelf if you ask, but they won't steer you toward one unless you insist. Instead, they'll nudge you toward something like a Daniel Defense DDM4 V7 at $2,193 or a custom Cerakote build hanging at $1,700. It isn't a conspiracy, just economics. Every firearm takes the same amount of paperwork time, whether it's a $600 pencil barrel blaster or a tricked-out race gun, given that they naturally prefer ringing up the higher margin unit. I once watched a new shooter wander in with $900 to spend. The clerk spent 10 minutes extolling the virtues of a brand new billet AR with an M-lock handguard, then turned around and said the Sport II was hard to get. 3 days later, I saw 2 unsold Sport IIs in the storeroom when I was picking up a transfer. They weren't lying about availability. Those rifles were allocated for future transfer fees, where the shop still makes a minimal profit, but they definitely weren't rushing them to the showroom either. Rifles like the $1,300 Ruger SFAR 308 barely hit the wall before they sell. Compare that to dusty old Bushmaster XM15s that cost the shop real money to keep in the rack month after month. If the owner lets the SFAR go too quickly, he faces a sea of slow movers that tie up capital. So the SFAR quietly vanishes for backorder customers only, and the Bushmaster magically becomes today's recommendation. You'll hear lines like, "Have you considered staying with 5.56 for ammo cost, or 308 is kind of snappy. Try a softer 5.56 carbine first." They're not wrong, but the motive is to balance inventory. It's like the grocery store pushing yesterday's bread at the bakery counter. You're nudged toward the product that needs a new home. I asked a buddy who manages a medium-sized store why he never puts his 2 SFARs on the rack. He laughed and said, "Because they sell the second the box is open, and then I'm stuck babysitting 10 older rifles nobody wants." By letting the hot model age in the back for a week or two, he uses that window to clear space bundle deals and move the stuff that otherwise wouldn't budge. Back in 2020, I watched dozens of brand new faces rush into shops with stimulus checks. Cheap ARs like the Anderson AM-15 utility rifle, $599 MSRP for the basic 16-inch model, were snatched up without a second of instruction. Some stores reacted by pulling the cheapest carbines from the wall altogether during high-stress weeks. Employees told walk-ins they were sold out, though the same rifles sat grinning in sealed cases beneath the counter. The staff wanted to size up each buyer first and maybe direct a raw novice toward a class, or at least a bona fide safety briefing. Was that legal filtering? Absolutely. The business can choose which firearms it shows a customer. One owner admitted he set a $700 floor during the height of the panic. If the buyer balked at spending more, he knew price rather than purpose was driving the purchase. And because straw buyers love inexpensive firearms, they can offload for cash on the street. Inexpensive ARs became invisible behind the scenes, only surfacing after a comfortable conversation and ID check. Regulars could always get them. Mystery browsers paid a little more or walked away. Sometimes the rifle is missing because the shop doesn't want warranty headaches. When chatter started about ejector problems on an early batch of Kel-Tec SU-16C carbines, I noticed my favorite dealer quietly shelved the remaining stock. He told me Kel-Tec had excellent customer service, but he didn't want a gun coming back through his shop for warranty work while new buyers stood at the counter complaining. Likewise, a buddy in another state sat on 2 Tikka T3X barrels after rumors of rust-prone bluing on an early run. Swedish steel or not rumor alone is enough to freeze sales. A small shop lives and dies by reputation, so if the manufacturer can't guarantee replacement parts in a timely fashion, the rifles never get a price tag until the dust settles. One clerk confided that he'd rather sell a more expensive alternative with a solid track record, say a Bergara B14 at $1,049, than take a chance on an otherwise popular model that might boomerang back for a firing pin fix. The rifle still exists. It's just hiding because nobody wants a phone call in 3 weeks that starts with my extractor snapped. Last fall, the state police ordered a truckload of Tikka T3X tactical A1 rifles chambered in .308. The price a department pays is lower than what you and I see, but the manufacturer still only makes so many a quarter. That means the civilian pipeline dries up quietly as soon as the agency's purchase order hits. Local stores receive a memo saying their back orders are delayed. To avoid frustrating random shoppers, they pull the remaining Tikkas off the rack and label them for institutional sale or transfer them to a distributor filling that government contract. Same thing happened with a run of Daniel Defense rifles, when a neighboring county sheriff's office ordered 50 DDM-4 V7s. The store manager wasn't about to advertise a rifle he had to ship out the back door the next day. He removed the shelf tag, sold the final unit to a deputy, and that was that. If you asked for the rifle, they'd just say, "Oh, they're tough to get this year." The shop isn't lying. It literally can't keep any given model once Blue Label money appears. When Ruger launched the American Ranch Gen 2 in .556 with an MSRP of $730, including a spiral-fluted barrel Cobalt Cerakote and AI pattern magazines, several dealers I know had heartburn. They worried a sub-$800 bolt gun printing 1-inch groups would cannibalize sales from Tikka's 850 T3X Lite or Browning's $1,000 X-Bolt. One shop owner admitted he put the Ruger Ranch on the furthest corner of the rack for that reason. Sure enough, every customer who held it commented on the crisp trigger and threaded muzzle. After selling 2 in one afternoon, the manager stashed the third behind the counter and started pushing those higher-ticket rifles again. A similar dynamic happened when Henry introduced the lever-action X model 4570 at $1,124. This rifle brings a threaded 19.8-inch barrel fiber optic sights and an M-LOK fore-end features normally found on lever guns costing hundreds more. In some shops, it sits in the back, while the salesman explains the virtues of a blued Marlin 1895 priced at $1399. Nobody hates the X model. It simply upsets the price ladder, and that can stall a salesperson's flow. I've watched gray-haired clerks steer new shooters away from Kel-Tec's $1,200 RDB bullpup or even the Henry X model 4570. Their rationale, a first-timer, will be more comfortable with a traditional Woodstock bolt gun like a $550 Savage Axis II. The RDB looks futuristic with its downward ejecting brass, and the Henry sports a black synthetic stock threaded for suppressors. Some staff consider that too radical for Aunt Susan buying her first deer rifle. Instead of explaining ergonomics and ambidextrous controls, they simply keep one RDB in the back and trot it out only when an enthusiast asks for it by name. I once overheard a salesman muffling the desire of a first-time customer who asked about ARs. "You'll like a Mini 14 better. Looks less scary." He didn't mention the St. Victor hanging 6 inches away. Was it malice? Not really. It was a paternal instinct mixed with optics. In states where gun culture is under a microscope, Some dealers willingly play gatekeeper, limiting what a nervous newbie walks out with to something less adjustable, less black, and certainly less likely to raise eyebrows at the local range. Manufacturers, such as Springfield Armory, set minimum advertised price policies. If a store shows the St. Victor Law folder at $1,100 when Maypee says $1,363, it risks losing dealer status. The workaround is to advertise call for price, or simply omit the rifle from the display until a curious shopper asks. Then the clerk can whisper, "Yeah, we can do $1,135 cash." That perceived hidden deal makes the buyer feel special, while keeping the store technically compliant. I've even seen shops list the rifle at full map next to a label that says limited stock. Once you ask, they wink and slide a card across the glass with a lower tag. They're not breaking the rules because the discount isn't publicly advertised. The rifle's invisibility is just a byproduct of map policies engineered to prop up value. So if you can't find your favorite model on the rack, it may not be out of stock, just out of view until you earn the handshake price. They're sitting on them waiting for price. Inflation election cycles are like monsoon season for gun shops. As November approaches, warehouses empty and MSRP means nothing. I know a small-town dealer who kept 10 Anderson AM-15 utility rifles in the basement during the summer of 2020, buying them wholesale for under $450. When riots hit the headlines, he slapped $999 price tags on them. Same rifle, doubled price, sold out in 2 days. He told me if I'd released them in April, I'd have made $75 each. Waiting earned me 4 times that. The same tactic works with PSA PA-15 Freedom carbines that cost only $449. During normal months, they're displayed proudly. When panic looms, they vanish. Ask about them and you'll hear none left, though a peek in the back might show a tower of unopened cases. The strategy isn't morally uplifting, but it keeps the lights on for many small shops that rely on boom and bust cycles. From their perspective, it's not hoarding, it's smart timing. The shop employees personally don't like that rifle. Some opinions run deep. I know an employee who refuses to sell Kel-Tec SU-16 rifles because he once snapped a polymer lower in half on a range day. The SU-16A now runs $589 and the C model $749, but whenever a customer shows mild interest, he'll pivot them straight to a Ruger Mini 14 at twice the cost. His manager won't force him because negative experiences can translate into messy returns. Another clerk despises M&P 15 Sport 2s, calling them starter kits. He'll weather the wrath of his boss just to keep them hidden in the storeroom while pushing the shop-assembled house brand. Bias may be irrational, but it shapes the showroom. A rifle ends up hidden not because it's faulty or unprofitable, but because Joe behind the counter can't stomach handing it to someone. The customer leaves thinking the model is rare, unaware it's sitting unloved 10 feet away in its cardboard coffin. Walk any gun show aisle and you'll spot secondhand M&P 15 Sport 2s for $450. That reality undercuts new in-box sales. A savvy dealer knows the same buyer might spot a pristine used unit in the consignment rack for $475 and snap it up. So why would that dealer place a new Sport 2 at $700 right next to it? He won't. New units are kept in storage. Used ones take center stage where margins are higher because the shop took the rifle in trade for even less. One manager explained it bluntly: I make $40 on a new Sport and $80 on a used one. The math drives the display. I've also noticed this with Rossi R92 lever guns. The polished stainless 357 Magnum model lists for under $1,000, yet used ones hover near $650. Shops would rather flip consignments and delay opening fresh cases until the pre-owned pile dwindles. And if they know a customer is the type to haggle, they'll always lead with a used gun. First, it gives them more room to play, more story to tell, and more flexibility. When the buyer says, "What's the best you can do?" thread-on muzzle brakes can reclassify a rifle as an assault weapon in certain states and counties. Instead of decoding every new rule for each buyer, shops discreetly sideline threaded barrel AR-10s, such as the $1,500 St. Victor 308, unless the purchaser seems legally squared away. Likewise, in Massachusetts, a pinned muzzle device isn't optional, it's mandatory. So dealers there hide any .223 Wilder rifle with an A2 flash hider that isn't permanently attached, including those Anderson AM-15 Frontline 16s that sell for $850. They keep them for out-of-state transfers or for LEO exemptions. A casual shopper never even sees the rifle, sparing the clerk an exhausting legal monologue about what's compliant. And because laws change faster than hang tags, most owners would rather underdisplay than over-explain. I've seen shops where the entire AR wall changes after a new bill drops overnight. 10 rifles are boxed up and labeled on hold pending ATF guidance. The paperwork risk alone can be enough for a dealer to bury a model and pretend it never existed. Some distributors bundle rifles below cost if the shop commits to cases of ammo or accessories. The store uses 1 or 2 units as bait, listing a PSA Blem Freedom carbine for $500 or an entry-level lever gun for $700 to lure foot traffic. Once the quota is met, the shop locks the remaining rifle in the safe. When you show up, they're all gone, but the sales crew will gladly pivot you to a higher-priced alternative. Because the rifle was never meant to be a volume item, there's no downside to hiding it after the promo runs its course. I witnessed a store manager tuck away 3 utility 16 rifles minutes after posting an online deal that said only 1 per customer. The single sacrificial unit sold in an hour. The other 2 stayed hidden until he needed a quick cash flow bump next month. The goal isn't to stock rifles, it's to stock reasons to visit. And once you're through the door, they know they can upsell based on urgency, not just features. Finally, the human factor. A few dealers are absolute aficionados. One shop owner I know squirrels away every Colt Python that crosses his path. He prices them high so they don't sell, then quietly converts them to personal inventory after the mandatory bound book wait period. Another hide-and-keep tale involves $1,200 Henry All-Weather 4570s. The proprietor loves stainless lever guns and believes they'll surge in value. He displays one at $1,599, well above MSRP, but keeps 3 more in the safe for investment. Rossi R92, Triple Black 44. Magnum carbines with an MSRP of $1,108 suffer a similar fate. When you ask, you're told they're impossible to find, and technically that's true because they're already spoken for by the man signing the checks. It's his shop, his rules, and his ever-growing personal vault. The rifles are hidden not for business, legal, or moral reasons, but for pure collector passion. He'll even tell you with a grin, "I'm the first customer here every morning," and he's not joking because he buys them before you ever get the chance. So there you have it. 15 real reasons why your dream rifle might be sold out when it's actually hiding in plain sight. From hidden Saints to slow-rolled Rugers and collector-stashed Henry's gun shop logic isn't always about stock, it's about strategy. Which of these reasons have you run into, or have you ever scored a rifle they claimed was gone? Drop your experience in the comments below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to click that bell so you don't miss the next video where we call out even more retail shenanigans. See you in the comments, folks.